Hello, my name is Josje. In this video I will show you how to make these tiles. In 2008, while I was working on the kitchen of my first doll's house, I came up with a way to make glazed tiles from paper. And I've used this method in both of my doll's houses and many room boxes now. The tiles can be made in practically any shape or color you like, but here I will show you how to make the square ones. And here are some of the tools and materials you'll need for this project. The paper is an acid-free Bristol paper, which is a thick, smooth paper at 250 grams per square meter. And then if you like to color your tiles, you'll need some paint, and I use an acrylic hobby paint. You'll need some glue, and I just use wood glue, which is fine for paper. Some brushes, a steel ruler, a hobby knife, a pencil, and then you'll need some spray varnish. And I recommend using a non-yellowing varnish in matte or gloss, that's up to you. Then you'll need a cloth and some water. And you'll need scissors as well. For grouting the tiles, I use a wall filler. I'm going to make some tiles to serve as a backdrop to this sink I made for my doll's house. And it already has a backsplash, but I would like to have a bigger area of tiles behind it as well. I'll be using this white Bristol paper to make the tiles out of. And I quite like the color white, so I'm keeping that. But white doesn't show very well on camera, so I will be painting some of the paper in this indigo blue color and make some tiles out of that color as well. And I've already printed the size of the tiles on the back, and they are exactly 1 by 1 centimeter. But you know, the tile size, of course, is up to you. And as you saw, I used a simple computer file for this and printed that. And this is just to give you a guide for when you're cutting out the tiles. So this is the back actually. So for painting, I'm going to turn it to the other side. And well, you know, we all know how to paint, so this is not very interesting. And now that the paper is dried, we can start cutting them. And actually I was looking at the paper, the blue, and I noticed that it looks really nice with the sink. So maybe I'll do that instead of the white. The tile pattern on the back makes it very easy to cut the tiles. And of course you could draw the pattern yourself instead of printing it. I use a new blade on my knife and a steel ruler, and then just cut the strips along the lines of the pattern. It is a lot more difficult to cut across the strips with a knife and ruler, so this is what I like to do. I cut them with scissors. And you have to be very precise and cut on the lines. This takes a while, especially if you need to fill a large area with tiles, and you need a lot of tiles. You often need more than you think, so make sure you have painted enough paper, because you have to mix them up once they're all cut. Of course, if you have a Cricut or a Curio or such a machine, the cutting process will be much quicker and easier, and more precise too. Now I actually have a Curio, so I quickly drew the tiles in the silhouette drawing program and let the Curio cut the tiles out. I cut some Bristol paper to the size I needed for the tiled area and drew horizontal lines across at right angles to the sides of the paper, spacing each line to the size of the tile, plus about 1 millimeter, and the 1 millimeter is for the grout line. If you need to, you could also draw the vertical lines as a guide for gluing the tiles, but I just do this by eye. And for gluing the tiles, I used watered down wood glue applied with a small paintbrush. I finished gluing the tiles, and I put some Delft blue tiles in there as well. But I wasn't happy with how it looked on the wall because I tried it out. And so I decided to take the top part away. So I cut that off. And I removed some of the Delft blue tiles. So now it's one big blue tile sheet. And this is where the sink will go. The varnish I'm using to create the glazed effect on the tiles is this Lasco UV Protect, which is an archival varnish. And I chose this because I'm using acid-free paper and I would like to continue with the quality of materials. It is quite expensive, so you could use another non-yellowing spray varnish, or maybe even something like Podge perhaps. Now, I've never tried Podge, but I've heard so much about it, so I've ordered some and I'm going to try it out as an alternative to the spray varnish. This is a semi-gloss varnish, but you can use gloss or matte if you like. The first layer is now dried. It hasn't taken too long, and as you can see, it's a little bit lumpy because of the paint that was on there. But it will be okay because we'll put something like 7 layers of varnish on there. So I'll go ahead and do that. The next layer now. And the one thing I do, because I spray paint outside or spray the varnish outside because of the smell, a lot of dust can come in and settle on the varnish, so I just have a little bit of cardboard and flip it over top. So it's really late already, and I put on 2 more coats of varnish, and a little bit thicker than normal, but as you can see, the more coats you put on, it then starts to have like a rounded appearance. I mean the varnish sort of collects on the tiles and not in the grout lines, which is really good. I just received the Mod Podge, which I'm going to try on these tiles, and I just read on the label that it has a curing time of 4 weeks. Well, that's not exactly what I expected, so, but we'll give it a go anyway. First layer done. Given the tiles 2 more coats of varnish last night. I think that's a total of 8 now. There's this nice rounding on the tiles, which make them look real. And I'm fine with the semi-gloss, so I'm not going to put on a gloss coat. On the other hand, the Mod Podge I'm not so happy with. This has had 4 coats of varnish yesterday, and it is dry and not tacky as I expected, so that's good. But the grout lines have filled up, and you can really see the brush marks, and there's no rounding on the tiles, so I'm not happy with that. Another thing I've noticed is that the Mod Podge affects the color of the tiles differently than the varnish does. These Delft blue tiles are much brighter in color than they should be. They don't look like the original colors that I've used. So that's something to keep in mind when you're using Mod Podge. Okay, I have to declare Mod Podge a fail. I've tried some more techniques, including diluting the Mod Podge and applying it to the individual tiles with a small narrow tip applicator, but it looked awful, and it did not get the results I was after. I mean, not even close. So a definite no to Mod Podge on this project. And now it's finally time to start grouting. The varnish has dried really well, and I've got my cloth and some water and my putty, and which is a wall filler. You may call it spackling paste or polyfilla, but it's just one of those white wall fillers, for filling holes in walls. Now this is only a small area of tiles, but you want to work in small areas at a time because it may dry, and once it dries hard onto your tiles, it won't be easy to get it off, or you may not get it off at all. So just small areas, and I'm just using my fingers, and I'm just pushing it into the grout lines, and then I'll take my cloth and make it a little bit moist, just a little bit of water, because after all, you have to be careful, because after all it is paper, so nothing too rough or too wet. And it's already in there. Easy peasy. Take the other side. And you don't want to have the cloth too wet, because then you pull the grout out of the grout lines again, and we don't want that, of course. Last bit. Of course, it's very helpful that I can do this on a flat surface. If this would be on a wall, it is slightly more challenging to do. But you could still do it. I mean, this is just making life a lot easier. And if you think you don't have enough grout on there, just let it dry, just clean it up, let it dry, and then you can always come back and put some more on. But I think for now I'll leave it. And just to show you that you can make many different styles of tiles with this technique, here are some subway tiles I cut earlier with the curio. And I gave them only a few coats of gloss varnish, and they should really have had a few more coats, but I just thought I'd give you an idea of what it looks like. You could also use pretty papers like wallpaper or these origami papers. And this is a quick sample I made of origami paper. You could make a whole wall with this, or just a pretty border. or cut different shape tiles. The possibilities are endless. So here we are. The tiles are finished and I'm very happy with them. I have temporarily put the walls in place to show you where it will go eventually, but I still have to finish the sink and the door and the walls first. I hope you'll have a go at making these tiles. Thank you for watching. Have fun!